Hey, welcome to another episode. This series is turning out to be even better than I expected. The Dark Before Dawn series, and we're really starting to understand journeys of people who have fought through adversity, who have leaned on their faith. Some may have even questioned it at times, and maybe some folks had to power through a little doubt and anger in the process. But they come out on the other side of that, and there is. Dark before dawn means that there is hope at the end of this, and I want to encourage folks. Today is no different. I've got a guy from the Midwest, the great Midwest. I've got a guy named Lou Everling, and and his wife had founded a something called the World's Grace Project, which is a nonprofit focused on working with refugees and youth in their community. He is actually a home educator. He has been tasked with the duty of homeschooling one of their children, and is a graduate of Indiana University. He's got degrees in business and general studies, graduated from Indiana Wesleyan, which is with a master's in ministry leadership, which is really cool. Didn't even know that was a thing. The ministry leadership part, that's really cool. He's finishing up his master's in divinity, if I'm right, at Bethel University. Pursuing a doctorate. I mean, this guy, his face is in a book when it's not in the middle of making lunch for his son during the day, I'm guessing. But he's a John Maxwell coach. I mean, speaker, trainer. So I can't wait to get in to this guy. He's a board member. We have a mutual friend with Uncommon Ministries and TJ Todd. Shout out to TJ for connecting Lou and myself, church planter, just all kinds of things. He's a pastor at Living Stone Church. So, man, I've got to just say to you guys listening, listen to this episode and dig into some details, because there's a wealth of knowledge here, not only from a academic and intellectual standpoint. It sounds like we got us a smart guy here, which I'm a little intimidated. But no, we got a great story here about one of his sons. So, formerly Lou, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I tuned into a couple of your other podcasts, and you've got some really good stuff going on, and so it's really an honor to be here and
Yeah.
represent the men's ministry, the things that's going on. So
Yeah, thank you for saying that. This series kind of, I feel like there's a need, there's a hunger, there's definitely a demand for people to hear hopeful stories, especially in the last couple of years where darkness seems to be overtaking the things of the light and the things of God and the things of hope. So I think people want to hear about stories of overcoming, because it is possible, and it can, the listener right now that feels like they're alone and in this boat that's sinking and there's no way out, that's not the case. And so today you're going to prove that to them.
yeah, well,
So,
thank you. Well, I hope so, and don't be intimidated. I'm not that smart. I just read a lot.
man, there's a lot of letters after your name. So anytime that's the case, I got to watch my P's and Q's here and use big $25 words here. So, man, just to give the audience kind of a brief, and I'm going to let you go into some of this, but your
Yeah,
son was diagnosed with cancer
yeah.
um, a few years back. I don't.
Yeah, he went through quite a battle at the age of 5, and I wish I could remember and say the 19-letter word of that type of cancer it is. But at that time, he was really like 1% of those type of tumors was he had that one, and so it made it a pretty difficult situation. And my wife, she ran a photo studio here in Cedar Falls, Iowa. And but like I say, he was 5. She had a mother's instinct that knew that something was wrong. Doctors kind of kept putting it off until she demanded that something be done.
Mhm.
And so he went through quite an ordeal. It was a major battle, but in that, God had really presented her with he's going to be okay through that battle. She A lot of prayer, a lot of discernment, big prayer change she had then. And essentially, the doctors couldn't believe her at peace stance, because 1/10 of 1% tended to survive that. And so
Mhm.
he was a survivor. He beat it. and he was a miracle, and really with a simple surgery, it didn't have to do all of the major chemos or radiations or any of the other treatments. And so, as we talk about the dark before dawn, it's been 10 years of free and clean exams until this September, on the anniversary of the 11th one, they found a new spot. And so that kind of flipped the switch and really turned the script of what had become taken for granted. It's going to be okay. Everything's okay. And so now we're faced with a new battle. And he's older this time, so he understands a little more. So he can, it's time to process that anger, the why me, what's going on here, how did this happen? These are the things, the anxiety that's involved around that. Now it's kind of hard to comprehend at 5, because it's the world going on around you. You just accept that for a normal, you don't ask questions. But now that you're 16, that's leading, and it's led us all to a moment of shock and stepping back and thinking, wow, what happened? And I will say there's that anger, and people have a right to be angry, in that dark, no matter what that battle is. I've been through a business partnership that was embezzled. And so, when that happened, you say, how did I let this happen? And why me? And I'm angry, and so that's what this last month has really been processing that.
And I'm glad you said that, because I got to ask, over these 11, did you say 11 years?
11 years, yeah.
Okay, so a lot has happened, but to the families that go through this process, and forgive my ignorance, but is it something that you sort of stay conscious of, that it could potentially, and then you maybe verbalize or articulate that as they get more mature? Do you guys have those conversations with the child and just kind of remind him, hey, remember how God pulled us through, or, other situations of adversity, you kind of go back to that one as a pinnacle point in their life? But does that help with the not inevitability, but the off chance that it does come back? Does that help with some of that processing with them?
It certainly has. And how that's been handled, and how God worked, how he was faithful on that promise before. And it's really led to new faith, deeper faith conversations with him. And so, he's and listening. But there's that moment of grieving the diagnosis too, like, there's 3 days of tears. And then you say, hey, we got to don the armor and get ready for battle. And so that's where we've been. And we're really fortunate, and the faith community that we've met some great people who have been through the similar battles too, and can share those conversations, because they leaned in on their faith in that battle. And so it's those conversations we've had have prepared him to converse and get that off his chest, and not hold that in, and talk about it, to get the light on the situation is the best, and to not hide it.
That's crucial, to have those other anchors around, the support system of people, not only who have maybe been through it, but those of faith who can sort of be there as they process through emotions. And anything in life, any of us, we got to have that. But, even so, I can't help but think, our first reaction as people is to go to the extreme, the worst possible extreme. So you mentioned 3 days of grieving. Like, it's no different than when we get a runny nose, all of a sudden we're going to die of COVID, in that moment. So we go to that extreme, and then we take our self to a dark place emotionally. And man, as a dad, so I've got 4 children, 3 sons. As a dad of a son, sometimes you're afforded opportunities to have a little tougher conversations than you might be with a daughter, and a little bit more frank, candid conversations. Did you ever have to maybe get with him, now that he's older, in a place where you're like, look, it's man time? Like, there's a rite of passage that unfortunately cancer has made him sort of jump into this manhood, maybe a little. What take us through some of those conversations?
Well, and I've just made myself available. Him and his mom have really done a lot of that work, to be honest with you. They've shared that, and I am just there to be the cornerstone, to like I'm here. I want you to know I'm here, and to be vulnerable. And sometimes it's just as simple as a hug,
Yeah.
like, yeah, and that can be it, is I'm here for you, and always know that. And so we've just been there. But I'm really fortunate that I do partner with my wife in this ministry, and so in
Yeah.
everything we do. And she always says I'm not qualified or whatever, but she's more than qualified. She's been through the battles, the struggles. And we're you made that analogy earlier. I have all this knowledge, and I have this book knowledge, but sometimes the application knowledge is far greater than any book knowledge I can have. It gives me a reference point to go back to, and that's great. But when we can say we have battle wounds and scars, and I've been here, so just like that, we have the health issues. We've also had that business venture partnership that fell apart like it did.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone shares, you don't know what it's like in whatever my thing is. Well, yeah, I do. I also worked for a factory. I know what it's like to be laid off, and I know what it's like to have the doors closed on you one day. Friday you had a job, Monday you're locked out.
Yeah.
and they moved away.
That's good. That's good.
That's one of the things that's just a diverse background. And no matter what that battle could be,
mm-hmm.
in the end, you have the same questions: anger, frustration. Why me? What did I do? Why is God punishing me? I think that's one of the big questions I face.
Always. I mean, I don't even, it doesn't matter what walk of life. I think everybody has that creep up, that lie from the enemy, because the enemy's got a box of popcorn and he's watching, right? And he's ready to kind of chime in when he feels the need to knock us off something. So my question might be, also along the lines of, being a pastor, you have the luxury of having a spouse that is really like practically a pastor too. Like, I mean, you guys are in ministry together. And so it's a Goose and Maverick situation where you guys are like teamed up to attack anything that comes at you. Well, I have a question, because a lot of the misconception, and some of my audience might fight through this too, is, man, pastors are really just kind of there for people that come in, the flock that comes in and needs shepherding, and they go through this. Pastors don't really go through it. Other people go through this. A pastor doesn't really, they can say all this good stuff, but they don't really walk in the trenches with it. Talk about, I mean, when that hits you right in the face in your life, and you're a pastor and you're in ministry, and how do you, where's the first place you went? I mean, is it as picture perfect as it seems, where you go and get in your prayer closet and all these scripture, and then you walk out and you feel better?
Right.
Talk to us about
it. It doesn't always seem that you walk out feeling better. You can read it, and you're like, again, the question comes back, why me? What did I do? I'm just going to be real vulnerable with that. Yeah, the pastoralship is we're not free from that, and I think everybody thinks they are, and a lot of pastors think they are, and that's the lie that the enemy tells them. That's one of the deepest things I see, and I'm fortunate I get to work with other pastors too on helping them, because they can't share with their congregation. The congregation's looking to you as a rock. The pastors can't share with their elder board or their district superintendent.
Can't be vulnerable at all.
Yeah, right? Because they're going to fire you. And I've seen it happen. I've seen them get fired, because then they said, well, you're not capable and strong enough to carry this on. You're weak. Well, that's not fair to them either. When we're asked to be vulnerable, we make it's in our deepest vulnerability. We make the most connections with others.
Right.
I'm lucky to be friends with a former Saturday Night Live comedian. And when he shared a business venture that went south, when I said, oh man, I can guide you, I can walk you through that. I've been there twice. Oh, I would never have known that,
Yeah.
And so now when we have these health things, we do that. And I was really fortunate, being in the doctorate program. I had to drop out of one of my classes because I was taking 2, and it was just too much. The research, the writing, just the amount of reading. And I reached out immediately to say, and not one of my professors said, oh, that's really a dumb thing to do. You need to stay in this class. They said, go ahead, drop that one class, but please stay in this other, and we'll help you. We'll do whatever. We're going to make ourselves available. The other professor said the same thing. She says, yeah, if you're dropping one of these 2 classes, I suggest you take the other one, drop mine, and call me, because I want to walk through this battle with you. Because guess what? She had been through the same thing with a family member. And so all of a sudden I find myself with a mentor that's located in Wisconsin that I never would have had if I hadn't reached out. If I'd have tried to stay prideful and say, I can do this on my own.
That's great.
The support's around there. And so I think our common misnomer is to think we can do it on our own. And then, we bear that burden of the world, and our shoulders weren't meant to bear that alone. And so if
this transparency and the vulnerability, obviously, if you hadn't expressed some of that, who knows what would have happened. And then the Bible talks about in Ecclesiastes, I think it's 4, it talks about, and I'm going to paraphrase, but basically, shame on you if you fall and no one's around to help pick you up, right? The person's got to have somebody walking with them, and when they fall, that helps pick them up. And there's countless other scripture talking about groups and being with people. But so I got to know, sometimes it's easier to be vulnerable with the outside world. Like it's easier for you to say this to your professor, but what happens in that family dynamic if we're going to get a glimpse of within the 4 walls of your home and going through the process with your son and the other kids observing, like kids watch, right? Everything's are caught, not taught mostly. And so what have you allowed them to see about you? Like that's real. I would assume you're very genuine, very authentic in the house. And so have you had some teachable moments where they've seen you maybe react in a way they were surprised by?
They've seen me at my best and they've seen me at my worst. And, and when they see you at your worst, that's when I always come back with an apology. Hey, there was a moment where I showed some anger that was unhealthy, and I'm sorry. I got caught up in the moment. And so I just always be vulnerable with that, to say, hey, I just let that go.
Dad goes through the same feelings and emotions you go through, right?
Yes, we have all the same things when we don't get our way, because we all have a selfish little kingdom that we want to be satisfied until we forget that we need to live for something bigger than ourselves. And so, it's drawn the family closer and tighter, to share these things and to just to be honest, like, hey, this is a struggle. I'll show you some tears today, So you have
how is your son being more specific to the patient, for lack of a better term, the one that's going through directly, and experiencing things that none of you can really relate to. I mean, some you can, but some you can't.
Some you just can't.
How's he handling some of the faith journey? Like, I know it's hard enough as a 16-year-old kid without any sort of diagnosis physically, right? What have been his biggest challenges from a faith standpoint?
Just really connecting that, again, that why me? Why did this have to happen? I knew it could, but I didn't think it would. He's just really starting to open up in conversation, which we didn't have a lot of that before, in the faith life and the questions and just sharing the vulnerable spots, just to say, hey, I need to talk, because he's one of those that will hold it in, and I can do it myself. I can do this. And it's that realization that we're reliant on a lot of others here right now. And so, it's just an open communication, though, I think is that's what we've seen change. And then, as we said, we were moving things to juicing and higher, but we since we grow hydroponics, we can grow the wheatgrass in again, here's the magic number, 3 days. So talk about things that resurrect. To buy wheatgrass shots, it's one of the most superfoods you can get. And I will say they taste gnarly. It's like, if you plowed a field and you could liquefy a plowed field, that's what it tastes like. But out of 200, I think it's out of 202 superfood nutrients, it has 196 of them in it. So for healing. And we grow it in our basement like crazy. And so the beauty of that is we have some natural healing things that we can provide right here. And we just take them up and got a nice juicer. And of course we grow a special pot for the bunny rabbit that we have. She likes the wheatgrass too. So
That's so
it becomes
crazy,
rabbit food.
man. What,
But
how did you guys get into that? What made you guys get into that?
Well,
I'm going to send you off on this rabbit trail, but maybe real brief. Cool. Like, how did you, tell us.
It does bring it all together. My wife actually grew up on a nursery and she hated that. She thought she would never go into that business of her parents and her grandparents and great grandparents. But through COVID season, she started a garden, and part of my doctoral project was around a cultural garden, which would bring people together. And so we planted a garden in downtown, in an abandoned ball field in Waterloo, Iowa. And we did this for another organization, and it was 3,500 square feet. And so it provided food and resources for the refugee community from Myanmar and the Congolese community that's around here. And so what happened was, we're in Iowa. We really only have 3 months of growing season here.
Sure.
And if spring goes too long and summer goes too short, some things just like right now we have cauliflower coming on outside. It's November. It took it that many months to get to grow. So we needed a resource to do lettuce and say some other things, bok choy and a variety of other things. So we just came up with these indoor culture gardens. And so hydroponics seemed to be the best way to go. And then we can control the nutrients, we can control the atmosphere, and we can grow 300 to 400 head of lettuce, butterhead lettuce in 1 2-foot by 2-foot square. We have a huge thing downstairs, so we can grow, I don't know, 100 in 3 weeks or 4 weeks out of that just really quickly.
Awesome.
And we changed those up. And so those units now are being used in several of the schools around the elementary schools and the career center here to teach kids gardening and actually to grow things for the culinary arts students. So that's starting to grow into that.
Man, back to you, because I want to dig in a little bit more. I mean, you've got everything pretty buttoned up. It seems like there's, you're accelerating your education and elevating it to another level. You guys have a ministry, you're a pastor, you're doing this agricultural thing that's really kind of a game changer. It sounds like and you've got just life going on, and you got multiple children. Like, what are you noticing about yourself through the process? Because let's face it, we had 11 years where everything seemed the waters seemed fairly calm, even though maybe the forecast might say there might be rain down the road, right? You knew the waters were manageable. So when this hit again, man, what about yourself either surprised you, or I don't know, maybe what do you feel like galvanized you, or is in the process of galvanizing you and growing you more than just an academic that you're digging into, but other ways?
Oh yeah. It's definitely, I find it interesting because it's, I've been resting in First Peter a lot. And so he talks about in chapter 2, he talks about the refining seasons. You're going to be refined like gold. And so I have, and somehow everything I've been resting in for either teaching as a pastor or is somehow involved in research comes back to refining. I landed on it in about 12 different places. And I thought, what a time for us to be seeing that and refining. And so for your question, I think it's just polishing me yet again. When you think you've hit a level where, I'm good, and your pride starts setting in, you get humbled pretty quickly.
Cool.
And that refining season has been humbling for me to just say, maybe my attitude was off. Maybe this is some things I need to change. I need to quit being more like Jonah and more like Jesus, because sometimes I think about that. I never thought
that'll preach. That'll preach right there.
That might be something we titled something soon.
There you go.
My career plans wouldn't have had me at 55 still in the Midwest. My friends are retiring and I'm just getting started. And so I always say that, I shouldn't be comparing, because obviously I needed this time to prepare for something bigger. And just like that, being less like Jonah and more like Jesus. And
Yeah,
so
that's real good.
but it's definitely been a refining time for me to quit focusing on the me circumstances, and it's the us circumstances.
So yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I think somebody listening right now might need this. Might be a pivotal point of the conversation, because you
Mhm.
say refining, and I wonder why, as people, we get so focused on we maybe look at it as a burning season rather than a
Yeah,
refining season. Like, we're so
right.
caught up in the heat and the burn that
Yeah,
is, it almost goes from we're being a victim to we're being equipped, if we're looking at it as a refining
right.
season. So
Yeah.
where did you have to get to have that perspective? I know you said scripture just kept coming to you, so you were like, okay, I get it, I get it, I get it. But for people that maybe aren't as into hearing
Yeah.
from, God or the Spirit, or, getting this impartation, maybe, why are we, and were you ever so focused on just that burn rather than the refining process?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because I think when I got to that point of that refining, I really had to, even though I have one seminary degree, you don't still fully understand that God loves you unconditionally. He's not going to think of you as a discarded
Mm-hmm.
piece of paper to burn,
Yeah.
but
Wow.
you're a piece of gold in His eyes. You are worthy. You're made in His image, and that, wow, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
I am being refined like silver. It's hot. The fire's hot and it's burning. But guess
Mm-hmm.
what? That gold tube is being smoothed down. It's being
Yeah.
refined into that fine jewel. And that somewhere, just like you said with the hydroponics, we need that here. So you're the second place that's just said, we had a group in Oklahoma. We need you here. We need you here. Okay, so if we can make this bigger than what we ever thought, it was just our self-serving backyard, a way to grow
Nice.
fresh vegetables and maybe do some workforce things for one local school. Now we're in 12 local schools. So, that's that beauty of that. And so I had to think of myself as how God really loved me. And I think that was spending some time in the Old Testament. As much as everybody kind of hates the drudgery of that, you still see God's underlying. He's not a judgmental God, a hateful God. He loves you. The things that happened for a reason, and that was to polish people. And so I
Yeah.
had to stop. I had to really focus on, I am made in His image. I am worthy. And that has kind of become, as a Maxwell coach, everybody says, well, you spent so many years in the photography field. How do I had to break away from my identity. Most people say, well, I'm a photographer. No, I'm a human being. And when I turned that from, I'm a person of value, adding value to others, it suddenly didn't matter if I was bartending or waiting tables or, whatever it
It's
could
it's
be.
about pruning. It's about pruning,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
vine
It's
and
that
the
pruning there.
branches. Yeah.
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 It wasn't the job that defined me. It was the fact that no matter where I'm at, if I'm just a dad standing down on the street corner and there's a kid or a parent that's in some sort of trouble, if I can add some sort of value comment to them for the day that made their day brighter, that's my identity. I'm made in
Yeah.
Him. I'm made in His image. And so
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was that shift.
and
It was hard.
and by the way, if you want to draw the parallel with the hydroponics and what you're doing beyond just your plot of land, like
Yeah.
what you're going through, I think, to your point, is maybe it's refining you for something bigger than you downstream. And I think
Yeah.
if somebody is listening to this, what you're going through, you're dark before dawn. Look, your dawn may be the fact that you run across somebody that's going to go through what you're going through, and you've been down the road. You've
Mm-hmm.
got the answers to the test, right? You
Yeah.
show them which path to walk and how to do it. And so that's, if we make it big, I think the crux of that, the moral of that story is making it about something bigger than just us, and
Yeah.
how it
Yeah.
becomes serving other people. So, man,
Yeah.
I guess the diagnosis has been really, obviously a game changer in your family, specifically in your son's life. Um, what what are the siblings seeing? Like, what, we kind of alluded to some of this, but they're younger, correct? Like,
Yeah.
you've got some younger.
Yeah. They're 12 and almost 9. Heston would say he's 8.5, but I tell him you're only 2 months away from 9 now, so you
Yeah.
might as well just say
Yeah.
about 9.
Well, so now has that opened up a window for you to have some of those spiritual conversations a little sooner than you would have had maybe ordinarily, or with your
Oh yeah,
16-year-old, you weren't able to maybe have those along
yeah, we
the
didn't have
10
those with
years or so.
him. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so
So
I always say my 9-year-old Heston, he's a better pastor than I am. He knows the material, he knows the stuff. He's always teaching me. I say, I might have the seminary degrees, but this kid's
the
got the
student has become the
applications. Yeah,
teacher.
yeah.
Yeah.
His mom was talking about. He was talking about in the car, and she said something about, you need to be the light. Something I forget which exactly. And he goes, I know the scripture, mom, and this is how it goes. And he schools her in the car, and he goes, I'm just dejected today, or whatever it was.
There you
But he
go.
picked right up after that. And so, that made her laugh. That I know
Yeah.
that, mom. Dad and I talk about being the light all the time. And so,
Yeah.
and then he goes on to talk about something else. And she's like, well, he was the light in my day. And so, yeah, they really, though, both the two youngest have already been baptized. They have a real strong
Yeah.
faith. So they're praying around this, and they continue to just grow that bond a little tighter. And
Yeah.
they share, they're open.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
awesome.
that's, I think, the beauty in some of the things is the open communication that has just started to result again.
Yeah.
And so
That's so good.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
real good, man. That's awesome. And I love that they're starting to be aware of their surroundings and start to dig in to creating some strength within
yeah,
themselves and that spiritual strength at an earlier age.
yeah,
Man, is there anything about Lou that we need to know? Like in the past, before the diagnosis, was
yeah.
there maybe another brand of darkness in your life that you feel comfortable talking about that maybe
Oh
pulled
yeah.
something out of you that surprised you about yourself? Like what do you have? What kind of word do you maybe have for somebody listening from a different part of your life that was not so great, or that
Yeah.
you had to really dig in and power through? Like what about yourself
Yeah.
was revealed that surprised you, maybe that was kind of an aha moment?
Oh, I love sharing this because, we often think of addictions as something that would involve opioids or alcohol or other things, but I'll talk about the addiction to hurry and busyness. I had an addiction to busyness. And that was a social media thing back when I had my business. If you made people, nobody wants to eat at the restaurant that doesn't have very many cars at it. So
Right.
if I could make my photo business seem like it was so busy, everybody wanted to be a part of it. But some of it was just a facade. I mean, listen to people. The first thing you hear them say sometimes in a store when they meet somebody they haven't seen for a while, what have you been up to? Oh, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Well, really, what are you busy doing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this endorphins rush when your photo would get 300 likes, from some competition.
Yeah.
The more awards I could win, the better I looked to my peers. And it was unhealthy. I mean, it drove me crazy. And I admit to that, and battled through that to just take that break away from it, and get away from that. I don't need that addiction or attraction to distraction in my
Yeah.
life. And I think really becoming a father helped me curb that. And then, like I said, the business partnership that I had, when it really fell apart, was the realizing point of, I'm at an all new low. I'm addicted to this busyness, and now this has disappeared. It's time to rest. It's time to go into solitude and find solstice in that silence. And that
Yeah.
was hard because it's easier to be busy than it is to sit in silence.
Of
And
course.
so I had to really do that. And at that same time, I was going through a cataract problem, losing my eyesight in my right eye, and couldn't figure out why. And it was a cataract. I was 44 and had a cataract of a 95-year-old. So I was virtually blind in my right eye.
Yeah. Hey, I have a question, not to cut
Yeah.
you off, but I have a question about that. You made a statement that stood out to me, that the addiction to the busyness and then
Mm-hmm.
being a father sort of curbed some of that.
Yeah.
Talk to my audience about, like, why are we so addicted to that
Yeah.
busyness, right? And then
Right.
I don't want to brush over the fact that, oh, well, yeah, fatherhood just kind of cured me of that. Like, so why do you
Yeah.
feel like fatherhood, or what about you did fatherhood refine? There's that word again,
Yeah.
to maybe to smolder some of that attraction to the distraction or the busyness.
Yeah, no, that's a great question because uh, kids were not supposed to happen for me, according to the professional medical world. And
Okay.
so somebody one day said he's a happy accident, and I said no, there was no accident. God made him on purpose.
Mm.
He was not an accident.
Mm-hmm.
God had his name. God had him designed for the day the person was the right
Mm-hmm.
person.
Yeah.
Uh, and so because of that, I didn't, how that cured that addiction was I didn't want him to see me needing affirmation through likes and admiration and all of those things that we can get caught up on. I wanted to spend my time with him. And I took a
Mm-hmm.
reverse role because I moved out here to Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife then became the breadwinner, and I was the stay-at-home dad because we still had a part-time photo business. We had that going, but we were making the decision to trend out of that and
Mm-hmm.
get out of there. So she was the breadwinner, and I took that reverse role because with some of the jobs that were offered me, I was only going to be paying for his daycare, and we just decided I would rather do without some things than
Mm-hmm.
to let someone else raise him. And
Yeah.
so then that was a hard thing as a man
Mm-hmm.
because you're used to that other
Of
role,
course. Of course.
to really, and then you get chastising from your friends. So you find out who your friends really are when you say, hey, I'm just making a decision. She had the job. She had the great position. She would have made more money. It only made sense for me to take this role and step back and humble myself to be.
And it could be a season. We don't know that this doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily have to be permanent, right?
doesn't have to
Yeah.
be permanent, but now it's been X amount of years. So this is it. This is
Right.
where it's at.
Cool.
So yeah. But it
So
was
that forced
really,
you to so that forced you having the child that maybe wasn't in the world's cards, or the
yes,
plan of the
right.
natural world. Maybe refocused you, is what I'm hearing you say,
Right.
to
Yeah.
what was important. So I think that's what I wanted the
Yeah.
listeners to hear, and I'm
Yeah.
glad you said that, because we all are laser focused, or we can be,
Yes. Right.
and we think we're doing noble things because we're trying to
Yeah.
provide, or we have a family and I want them to see me being this, or I need to
Yes.
be this leader,
Right.
which we do, right, as the man or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think you can get what you said was, that paralysis of the distraction, attraction, and all these
Yeah.
things, affirmation.
Yeah.
So
All
I
of
think
this
that was
stuff.
great. That's what I wanted to pull out of that, because you
Mhm.
you mentioned it briefly, and I thought that might be a key part. But yeah,
That
if you needed
is.
to elaborate on that at all.
Yeah, no, it says it all. And so what it did, that addiction to busyness and hurry, really desensitized all my relationships across the board. I mean, I had no relationship with God. I had no relationship, my relationships with my parents, my brother, all that was troubled. And even creating new relationships with people was difficult because suddenly your conscience hits you and you're like, this is a facade. I can't live like this. And then the harder you try to live like that, the more you get burnt out. And
Yeah.
then you become exhausted. It's emotionally exhausting. It's killing you.
Yeah. And so I definitely want to, as we transition to sort of closing up shop here on
Yeah.
this conversation, it's been really great. I wanted to get an idea for the audience, because everybody's asking or thinking what I want to ask about. Okay, what's the prognosis for your son? Like, what's the
Yeah.
future look like for the next, I don't know, 60, 90, 12 months? I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
So
and then, and then maybe I guess what the dawn, so Dark Before Dawn is the series.
yeah.
So what does your dawn look like if we're looking out on the horizon for Lou?
Well, we're starting to get to that point. The sun's starting to come up over the over
Yeah.
the edge there, and we'll know more next month. We have more tests and then
Mm-hmm.
meetings with the doctors in December. And
Mm-hmm.
so we know the first part. They're meeting now and doing their things, and so we're trying
Yeah.
to do our part on this end by changing diet, changing some of the things that go into the body that can be more healthy and have known healing qualities. In December, we'll get another exam or test or a MRI, and the whole scans will come back, and the doctoral team will give us that next step. So what dawn looks like for us is miracle healing, and we go back and they say it was just a blip and our minds took us to the wrong place. That's what the dawn really is. Our prayer request is that miracle. We know that with the time over the years, the procedures have changed. It could be as simple as a surgery, and again, just like the last time, a miracle surgery. And God's always faithful in his promises. And so we're praying around that. The beauty this time is we have a bigger prayer circle than we had the last time.
Right. And so for you, just for Lou specifically, next 6 to 12 months, I don't, you're pastoring, you're shepherding, you're studying, what does good look like down the road for the next maybe 6 to 12 months for you? What's the next project in your mind or something that you're got your sights on?
Yeah, well, our sights are really to take the faith-based side of the World Grace Project and the hydroponics to just what you said, the homeschool group. I had a local homeschool group ask us about the curriculum. And so the beauty of this is we have 4 employees that just came on board, 4 employees that just came on board to help us write this curriculum. We have some volunteer teachers that are teaching it. So they're putting the stuff together that they're doing in their room with our stuff that we can then share with that. And my beauty of that would be to teach the faith side of this while Karen does the garden side and the chemistry side of this.
Right there.
To really start taking that, how that's going to work and how that's going to come together, bringing and the beauty of this, we call them culture gardens because we can take this into a community, and so these kids, no matter where they're from, can learn about a vegetable growing somewhere in the world.
Do you have a website? Do you guys have any place where maybe we can, maybe just your social media where we can follow the process and just the progress?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the World Grace Project, it's just worldgraceproject.org. Okay. And then my Instagram account is just Lou Everling. Leverling.
Okay.
I don't have any fancy names for it. I do have one called Homeschool Dad IA, and so we put some stuff on that. But that's where you can follow me most with Heston, and then you can just Facebook me. Everybody does that's just under my name. And then my wife's website for the main nonprofit is littleironmom.com, and that's where we put all the faith-based elements of what's going on there. It's got, we partner with Love Mission for Haiti as another partnership. And so that's another beauty. I just got word before we got on here from my friend Wilkin that he's connected with some Haitian families here in Cedar Fall or in the Waterloo area. Cedar Valley.
Wow, very cool.
And they're interested in a Haitian church. So I'm going to be working with him to empower him to pastor his people. He's been here for 2 years and feels homesick because he hasn't, it's like he misses his people. And so there's not many communities we've been able to really find them here and start getting everybody together. And then our church website is bealivingstone.com.
Okay. Awesome. And all that'll be in the show notes for this episode.
Cool.
And so, man, going forward, I'm going to speak for my audience when I say thank you for being here. It's been great to hear your story. Great to hear what you guys are doing. And it's great I can't wait to hear the good news when it comes down to the prognosis for your son and the healing that will be that we know we've already been given. We just have to receive it. And I believe that it's there. And so God did it once. He hasn't changed. So
he hasn't changed.
Can do it again. So
that's right.
Audience, I hope you've enjoyed this. And I know you've gotten some good, valuable tools from this and some insight from Lou. So with that, till next time, he's been Lou Everling. We've been Last in Line. Be blessed.